Welcome, homeschool moms. If you are here, if you're joining me, let me know who you are, who you're homeschooling, and what time management challenges you have before we get started. So today's session is based on many questions that I get from homeschool moms. It typically is one of the most commonly asked questions, especially when you're probably in your second year or so of homeschooling, where people want to know how to manage their time. And yet, it is a question that we ask across our years of homeschooling for various reasons, for very different experiences. So in today's session, we're going to dive deep really into effective time management strategies for your homeschool mom journey. One of the questions that I received today was from Mary Elizabeth, and she said, I think honestly, I have too much to do between children, homeschooling them, home care, groceries, cooking, marriage, bill paying, etc. And then there's the ever elusive self-care and pursuing things that light me up. I need to develop a simple yet flexible routine and rhythm that is manageable and adaptable to the needs and desires of my life. Having a plan for the week, but being able to prioritize and rearrange it if necessary. I hope I was able to explain that clearly. You sure did. That was super helpful. And I asked you to give me a little bit more about, how many kids you're homeschooling. And you shared that you have 5 kids, 10, 9, 7, 5, and 20 months. Wow, girlfriend. That is a lot right now. You're in the really super busy season, like you needed to be told. But I can see that you are in a very busy realm of life. And I think one of the biggest things that we don't give a lot of credence to is that the emotional energy is required to do all of that is a lot. So right there, it demands margins, and frankly, it demands silence and quiet at times where you need to literally walk away or come away from your environment. So you said, my homeschool approach varies. I guess I'm an eclectic unschooler. That sounds familiar. That's probably a sign that you're in your 4th year of homeschooling, maybe in your 7th year homeschooling, because we all declare ourselves as unschoolers. No, we all declare ourselves as eclectic homeschoolers eventually. But you said you're looking for a little more structure. You have an online business, you're sharing tower gardens, and you've been wanting to work on showing up online more intentionally and building a community. Beautiful. Okay. So that is a discussion point that we can use from Mary Elizabeth. But first I want to just give thanks for joining me today. I know that you're in the middle of a busy homeschool day. Maybe you're prepping dinner, depending on where you live. Maybe you're getting ready for the kids to get to bed, or maybe you're still in your homeschool day. Whatever the case, I'm here, Teresa Wiedrich. I'm a certified life coach, homeschool mentor, and I'm here to help support you in your homeschool mom journey. So let's get started and use our time well. So I see this discussion about time management as a whole lot more than just talking about how do I schedule in the activities that I want to include in my day timer and actually doing them. So for varying reasons, we have issues with time management. We need to actually act like a detective in our days, really to assess our schedule, to assess the things that we're doing, how much time it takes, the margins around the things that we're doing. We need to become a detective of our own life, understanding where every precious minute flows. We can't make changes in our life, in our time intentions, or in our day timers if we don't know what we're actually dealing with. Once we've unraveled where our time is disappearing to, then we can focus on discovering where we want to invest that time. So picture this, you're decluttering your time, you're decluttering your life, something like that. But it's your schedule. You're going to look at your day timer. And that's what I'm going to encourage you to do this week, is to actually grab the time audit that I have and use that as a tool in your detective toolkit. Homeschooling is a journey that is filled with a lot of responsibilities, so many moving parts, and there's whirlwinds of activities. There's a lot of time spent in cars bringing kids to activities, and it's so many activities. You know, you lived it today. We lose sight of what truly matters at times because there is always one more demand, one more voice asking us for one more thing. So there are a lot of demands, but we have intention in this discussion, especially, to get clear on what actually matters. In a discussion that I had this morning with a mom, and she was digging deep into the what is the most important thing, because I feel like things are crazy busy and I can't think straight, but I know I never finish my to-do list. I know that people are asking me to go play a game with them, or at the end of my day, she said her husband is looking to have time with her, but he or she just doesn't feel like she's getting all the things done. And that is our reality. I think partly in our culture as well. It's not just our homeschools. There's this goal for productivity. There's this goal for one more thing. You can do one more thing. You can add more extracurriculars to your kids' homeschool life. You have so many options and you should choose them all. Well, it's just not possible. The magic here in this discussion really lies in us clarifying what the most important things are. So it would be valuable for you to grab your journal and a pen so you can answer a few questions soon about what it is that is most important, what truly matters. When we are trying to achieve clarity in our time management or in our homeschool life, we need to set meaningful goals, not just ones that random people assign you. So if some of the questions that I offer you don't seem relevant, you don't have to answer them. If some of the ideas that I have don't seem like they would be useful for you, you don't have to do them. But my goal is to help you clarify what is the most important thing. So we're going to help you set meaningful goals, creating a sense of purpose for your daily activities. Without a sense of direction, it's easy to get lost. That's so necessary for us to grab our phones before we leave to go to, say, a new friend's place, because we probably want their address. We probably want to put it in Google Maps before we walk out of the house and have the directions ready to tell us which direction to go. And I think we kind of need to act like that in our schedule and in our homeschool mom life, really. We have to figure out what are the things that we need to move toward. Where are we moving toward? What do we need to do to put that into our Google Maps before we set out on our day? And it can't be dictated by what other people are doing. It can't be dictated by this need to have everything on our list completed, because that's not always possible. It can't be dictated by more is more, adding one more thing because you saw someone else bring an extracurricular activity for a child and that one looked really cool, so you should probably do that for your kiddo too. You can do that, but it will create the kind of energy that you're probably experiencing right now if you are feeling a little stressed or overwhelmed. And I would like to hear what experience you're having as you're living this homeschool life, especially at this point in the year, about November. This is a time where people typically are overwhelmed, but when December enters and the holiday events, all of the activities come into play, it gets a whole lot more harried. So let's try and clarify it now. My goal is to help you feel like the values you want to live by, whether they're your personal values or your education values, those will actually align with your day-to-day. So grab your journal, and I want you to write down 3 words that might represent your personal values, who you are as a person, how you show up in the world, and what you want for your life, what you see as a valuable element of your life. I'll give you a moment to do that. Okay, so the next thing that I want you to do is write down what values do you have that are representative of how you see home education and what its purpose is in your home. If you do not have words that you know for sure are the words that would represent that, know this, two things. You can actually ask me for a list of values, or you can actually Google something like a list of personal values and look them over and decide which ones feel the most relevant to who you are. Also, when we're talking about educational values, oftentimes I ask people, what do you believe an education to be anyway? Because we want to get clear on what it is we think we're doing every day. If we believe that one of our values in home education is to have freedom, like I had, then we have to ask ourselves, are the activities that we're doing in the day aligning with that energy or value of freedom? And certainly in my experience, that was not always the case. I was not always moving towards freedom. I was trying to move towards a perfect private school in my own home. So what are your educational values, and do they align with the actual activities in your day? I, once upon a time, was an overzealous planner. I had my day timer lined up, even color-coded. I had little stickers in it. I tried to fit in 30 hours of activities in a 24-hour day. And I kid you not, this is true, because I discovered a time audit. A very simple tool, the time audit, that helps us get clear on the activities we're actually doing in a week. And this is what I encourage you to do, is download the time audit, really simple tool, put it on your counter. And if you can do this for a week, it really will give you so much insight on how you're spending time. So then put it on your counter, and every time you shift into another activity, either write it down at that point, or even if you're generally writing down the details at the end of a day when you're about to prep dinner, or maybe right before bed, write down what you actually did. And I know that this is a big ask for you because you've got a lot going on, but it's profoundly useful information for you, because you might discover that you're investing time in certain things that you weren't expecting you were spending quite that much time. And I don't just mean your screen, because I know even as homeschool moms, we do use our screens. Probably we have screen time issues, just like we assume we have with or sometimes assume our children have. But we might have screen time challenges too. But it's not just screen time challenges that we might be investing too much time in. We might be on the phone more than we want. Or we could be surprised to discover that it actually takes 20 minutes extra to get to the next extracurricular activity because we're in rush hour, or maybe, trying to help our child manage their emotions in a day is taking a whole lot more time than we thought it would take. Whatever you spend your time on in your day means that's what you're spending your time on in your week, which means what you're spending your time on in your year, and also what you're spending your time doing living. Our goal is to help you clarify what it is that you want to be spending your time on. There was a year in our marriage, a very long time ago, when we decided to write everything that we purchased. We would record everything we purchased. And I remember that we had, over the course of a year, and I say we very loosely, we discovered that we spent $300 on bubblegum. It was shocking to discover, because two things. One, I didn't chew bubblegum. It was my husband that was chewing bubblegum. And the other thing is that he wasn't over consuming gum. He just had it in his pocket. And so he would discover that that's how much money he was spending on bubblegum. And that's the kind of experience that you can have when you're learning about your use of time, that you can discover you're using a lot more time than you thought you were. So it is useful for you to clarify how you're spending time, and really sitting at the kitchen counter and writing down the fact that you just spent 10 minutes cleaning out, you're cleaning off the sofa cushion again because your bored 3-year-old was coloring. This is useful. also that moment is going to happen. And then you're going to look at that time audit and the information you glean from it and recognize, is it possible for me to prevent my 3-year-old from ever writing on the sofa again? I hope so, but probably not. And so there's those moments where you weren't expecting that much time to be invested in something that related to something you didn't plan, that those are going to be included in your day. That's a part of our time usage that we just don't consider. The other one that we don't consider is how much time we spend thinking or feeling big feelings. If we're feeling stressed or frustrated or challenged by a relational issue, those moments are big energy pulls or sucks, I call them. And they're inevitable at times as well. And yet that inevitable time or that energy suck of our time is part of our schedule. And it most definitely is not the stuff we're expecting to put on our planner or day timer. And yet we have to assume that there have to be margins. There has to be margins for our big emotions, our kids' big emotions, or our partner's big emotions. There has to be flexibility margins so that when somebody calls and says, I need you to come bring mom to the hospital or something, that you know that that could have been something that you could plan for. There can be a discussion here for chores, housework, and menu planning. Those are things that I go into in detail. I'm happy to have a conversation about that if that's something that you're curious about. I think we often underestimate, though, how long things actually take, especially when we have kids with us, especially when there are a lot of emotions and energy around us. If you're in a space where you discover, or maybe you have an opportunity to go outside the home to do an activity that doesn't involve your kids, or you have an afternoon alone at home, which I'm sure happens rarely, but if you do, you discover you have a lot of time. You have the capacity to finish things very quickly because you're mentally present, you're mentally all there. And this is why I think it's actually valuable to even spend, if you can just get a one short break a week away from home. It helps to ground you. It helps to make you feel like you are calm and you are capable of doing all the things when you get home. You have a different kind of energy to show up with or for your family. I think it's a valuable thing, an underestimated benefit to include, if you're wanting to really assess your time and look at how you can change it or approach it differently. Now, when we're actually talking about homeschool activities, I'm sure you've been introduced to doing, one history activity or curriculum thing with all the kids and doing it at, just expecting different things from different kids based on their age or stage or how they're engaging. And I do think that's valuable. I also think that just because other people are doing, say, a Charlotte Mason approach in a certain way, or they're unschooling in a certain way, that we don't have to align ourselves to the things that the other people are doing or in the way that they're doing them. Because we have different kids and we also have different penchants for approaching whatever subjects or activities differently. So what you could do is what I've done often, and I do this even in my work here, is to time block. And when I refer to time blocking, I mean get a blank page. You can easily download a PDF. I should probably get one of these, but download a PDF of time blocks. So if, a 24-hour time block, and then use color markers and shade out the hours that you are theoretically sleeping. And then you can use a different color to say, this is the time of the day that I'm going to, do circle time in the morning or do a read aloud with the kids. Or this is the time that we're going to set aside to go outside every day. Or this is the time that we're going to do a math activity. If you have that consistent routine where you know these are the things you're typically doing, then over the course of time, you're going to be able to do a lot. You will be able to accomplish it, but you'll also be able to accomplish allowing for that flexibility margin that I spoke to earlier. You'll be able to actually know that you are doing enough because you have been doing it so consistently. So if you want to learn more about the time blocking concept, perhaps I will actually have to create a time blocking PDF. It's so simple. It really is just the 24 hours in a day with a little literal block, and you can decide to put in whatever you want in that block. For me, I've learned that now that I'm not homeschooling anymore, I've learned still that I can easily allow my time to get away from me, and I can still find myself working beyond a time I normally would want to. So even though I don't have the same number of kids you all have at home, I have one kiddo at home, and he's 15. So there's a lot of independence, and he grew up in a home of a lot of independence. So because of that, he's not got the same needs as a family, a homeschool family with 5 kids, 5 younger kids. And so still, though, I find myself somewhere by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I tell myself, okay, you're done. You're going to put things away. Your to-do list isn't finished. You have shown up for the most important things in the day, but all the little things that are on your to-do list are just going to have to be moved to the next day. And if I am consistent, if I'm able to be consistent with the activities I've chosen that I've put on the day timer or the planner at the beginning of the year, then I am getting a lot done over the course of time. Now, I should add a little caveat here. If you happen to wonder if you have ADHD, then I actually encourage you to go take a look at my coffee chat with Emily from Homeschool Unscripted over on Instagram, because I had just had a conversation with her today, and you will see the conversation live there. It really does help clarify if you have or suspect you have ADHD, then trying to maintain a routine, trying to be focused in your routine and stay on task is going to be a really tricky challenge. Now, obviously, there are other mothers that are in that same space. They're in that experience as well. And it isn't easy, but it is the life that they're living, and there are ways, there's tools to approach it. One of them being self-compassion, one of them assessing all the shame messaging that they've received for experiencing life the way they experience it. So I encourage you to go check out that chat if you wonder if that is a challenge for you. Because then if you're listening to me this far on a discussion on time and how to manage time, you'll discover that it is very difficult for you to stay on task. It's very difficult for you to be consistent. So I'm assuming in this conversation that this is not the challenge. Now that's just because that's coming from my experience. So, okay, so I'll come back to the experience of what it's like to manage your time as a homeschool mom. At core, I really think you need to get clear on what matters, what really matters, because you can look at your schedule and you can say, why did I choose to put the things on this list that I put on this list? Do they really matter? Do they matter to somebody else, or do they matter to me? Are they relevant for the specific kids you have? Is more going to work? What I mean is, if I add more, or if I expect more, or if I expect a certain level that is really hard to achieve, will it actually work? Without me being frustrated, without a child being frustrated, will more work? Because I've learned that less is always more. It is always more, girlfriend. I would suggest the one thing that you really should add to your schedule, like really should add to your schedule, is 1 hour block of doing nothing every day, or at very least once a week, where there is nothing scripted. Maybe there's no screens, no activities prescribed by mom. There's no extracurriculars. There's no fun plan. There's no engagement. There's nothing. We'll just, who knows what's going to happen in that hour. And it's just going to be a quiet hour. I think one of the biggest disadvantages kids have in schools is that they don't have this unscripted time. They don't have an opportunity to be bored. They don't have an opportunity to decompress from busy lives. And I think that goes for you probably more than your kids. So I encourage you to find a space, whether it's once a week or once a day, where you say, this is going to be nothing. This is going to be a nothing hour. Now, if you have a toddler or you have a baby, of course, that means nothing hour with the toddler until they get bigger. And just let me reassure you that, yes, you are in a very busy season, and it really is a lot during that season. But by the time they're about 5, assuming that everything is typical, then you can expect that things really will become quieter. Oh, I wish I could have gone back to tell myself that at the time, because I really did wonder if it ever would be. And now I'm at the place where it really is. And it is surprising when it happens. But when your youngest is 5, in my experience, that is when things begin to get a little quieter. And until that time, they get to join you for that nothing time. Another thing I'd encourage you to do, if you're looking at what really matters and how do you want to include what really matters, is to include those mindfulness moments. You know how I talk about scheduling into your phone a mindfulness moment where you can check in with yourself and see how you're feeling? Well, I would encourage you to also do those mindfulness moments. Schedule in a moment in your phone that says, is what you're doing right now valuable? Or is what you're doing right now important? Because it doesn't take us very much, especially if we're on our phones, but for various reasons, the activities we choose in our lives, we go, you know what? I thought this was a great idea. And it did sound like it last year, or it was last year, but it isn't now. It's time to delete that activity. Sometimes the conversation isn't so much about deleting an activity or deleting a resource or curriculum or deleting anything on our schedule. Sometimes the discussion is, do we feel really satisfied in our lives, and why not? Is there something that is gnawing at us or making us wonder if this is all there is? Or if I did it differently, would I be happier? Perhaps there is a relationship that's really dissatisfying, that's drawing a lot of energy away. Bigger life discussion points where we're dealing with something that when a moment in our schedule gets confounded, or it feels like things went off track, or we weren't able to accomplish what we wanted to, that it just feels all the more exacerbated, like made worse. So we get more frustrated with life because things just aren't going our way. So sometimes the question isn't really about time management at all. Sometimes it's about the bigger life questions. And if you want to talk to a life coach, I'm here. I'll send you a link if you're curious to learn more. So let me see what else I wanted to share with you. Four questions. Ask yourself, or you can answer in your journal, how are you actually occupying your time? What are the activities you're including? And you're going to learn that through the time audit. Then you're going to look back after that week in your time audit and say, is it actually possible for you to do the things that you thought you could do in a 24-hour period? And which of the activities that you included over that week, which of them do you actually want to include? Then you look at each of those activities and you ask yourself, do those activities, and I mean each one of them, Do they align with my bigger values, my personal values, and if it's a homeschool related activity, my home education values? Because you might discover, as I once did, that house cleaning is actually valuable. Not because you're looking to make it perfect, but because it actually does bring you a sense of joy. Yes, I'm not kidding. You can actually experience a sense of, the house is clean. The world feels right again for 20 minutes on a Saturday afternoon. But it does indeed feel good, and it does feel like I achieved something. I was responsible as a mother. We worked together, and the place was kind of sort of clean for 20 minutes, once a month, once a week, however you define clean and how often you define clean. So even housework can be a useful goal or a useful activity that aligns with your values. Because that is the biggest question is, are your priorities reflecting your values? Are the actual activities that you are doing day to day, are they aligning with your values? Because for instance, that discussion of the child that writes on the sofa and you're wondering, or you're telling yourself, I do not have time for this. I do not have time to clean up my child's mess on the sofa. We were supposed to do Story of the World. We were supposed to do the Book of Centuries. I'm throwing out so many things that clearly came from my homeschool. I don't know what you would include that you thought you were supposed to do today, but you didn't accomplish. And yet you allowed for your child to be a human in your home. And though they are going to learn that probably writing on a sofa is not the right place to write, unless that is, of course, what you've chosen to do in your home, that this is what happens when we have 3-year-olds. And by the way, that happened to me the week or the day after we purchased a new sofa. But on a Christmas Eve, no less, we were just about to go to a Christmas Eve service and this happened. But is a moment like that something that you would accommodate for in your time? Is it something that your approach to it or your response to it, is it something that aligns with how you want to show up for your child? Does that mean it's going to require time to address that challenge? Yes, it does. And does it align with your values to be patient and work slowly and show your child that here's the paper that you can use? That time is valuable because it aligns with your bigger values in your home. So last questions that I want you to consider is, what is your big picture in your home? What really matters? What do you personally value for your life? What do you value in your homeschool? What do you see as your end goal? Those are the questions you might want to ask yourself to get clear on how you're spending your time. If you're interested in learning more about time management strategies, I'm going to bring a little more practical ones next week, talking about habit stacking, building predictable routines, meal planning, house cleaning routines, and I've got a whole bunch more to share next week. If you'd like to have any question answered or you'd like me to address anything, please put that down below and I'd be happy to discuss it next week. I have 2 book recommendations, if you have extra time. And they are these: Essentialism and The Not So Big Life by Sarah Susanka. It's a book that has helped me clarify my sense of life purpose, but also my day-to-day activities. And I actually interviewed the author, Sarah Susanka, in my podcast. So you can always check that out as well. A very interesting conversation between her and I to clarify what's most important for you. So, Mary Elizabeth, I would love to hear, what are the specific challenges you find that are making you feel like you just can't get everything done? What are the sources of time management challenges that you just are like, but it's this? and I haven't addressed it. If I haven't addressed your question, or if you want to clarify a little bit more, please put that in the comments below. And I think I'm going to leave it there. So I hope that you and your kids can turn your homeschool challenges into your homeschool charms. You got this, girlfriends.